Okay, welcome back, everybody. My name's Carlo Rachopo, and we're here with According to Carlo. And you know, we've been doing a lot of social media in the past, and many of you have seen it. But we just really want to start having more discussions with people in the industry and sometimes people outside the industry, and just get really real on what's going on out there. Try and have some fun with it, but also make sure we tell it like it is. And so today we have a guest with us. Her name is Melissa Douglas. Thank you very much, Melissa, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And Melissa's quite unique because I know a lot of people who have a real estate license and a mortgage broker's license, but I don't think I know anybody who is a lawyer and owns a real estate brokerage. And her brokerage is Mira International Realty.
Yep.
So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having
Can you just
me.
tell us a little bit about your history?
Yeah, so I've had my law firm now on my own for 8 years. I started out in the legal field in 2010, so it's been 15 years. And I kind of went off on my own in 2018 and started out in real estate, wills and estates, and family law. And now we've expanded. We have 3 offices, about 20 staff, and we've also added on landlord and tenant and small claims matters as well.
Wow. And the locations?
We have an office in Barrie, Bradford, and Vaughan.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, especially, I mean, you said 20, when did you start again? Tell us again.
So I got my license for law in 2016, and then I opened up my own firm in 2018. So for the other 2 years, I was working at another firm.
Okay. So the fascinating thing is you've seen the real estate business.
Yeah.
You see it from the legal side as well.
Yes.
And so, you know, I always get calls, and they ask me legal questions all the time.
Yeah.
And I always, you know, they don't always like my answers, but in the end, I always say, please make sure the lawyer is okay with this.
Yes. Yeah.
Because obviously I like to always say I'm not a lawyer. But tell me something, especially in the last 3 years, the challenging times that we've had.
Yep.
Tell us something that you find have been challenging from the real estate perspective, what you're finding or what issues that you're dealing with.
Mine are kind of morbid. One thing that I've noticed is a lot of people don't really know the difference between a will and a power of attorney. And when powers of attorney are being used to sell a home, it's very important that you're cautious and maybe do get some legal advice before using it, because you might not even be able to use it. Because there's big differences between a power of attorney for property that's continuing or that might be restricted. So that's kind of a little pet peeve of mine when I see people using the power of attorney and it shouldn't have been used.
Yeah. So obviously power of attorney, it's used when someone is alive, of course.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I once had an agent tell me the seller passed away and they were trying to find the power of attorney. And I'm like, no, that's not right.
You know what my favorite one is? And maybe my favorite one is an agent will ask me, there's an estate, of course, and there's a trustee.
Yeah.
And they sign their, they go, who signs it? And what do they say? And how do they sign it? I go, okay, always remember you just sign your own name.
Yeah.
As, you know, power of attorney or as trustee.
Trustee,
And so sometimes they think that they're signing, oh, the person who passed away is Joe Smith, for example. And they go, put Joe Smith. I go, no, you can't sign for another person. So especially if they're dead. So I find that it's fascinating. So, but again, I know those answers, but a lot of times I always defer them. I usually know them most of the times, especially those simple questions. I mean, simple issues that you just talked about.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating that they get themselves in a little bit of a challenging time. And we require the power of attorneys. We require copies of the power of attorneys.
100%.
If we're acting for the sellers, we require the power of attorneys. And then we also ask for, in many cases, if it's a will, we ask the lawyers to send us an email confirming that these are the estate trustees.
Yes.
And this way, it covers our butts, but it also makes sure that we're dealing with the right people.
Yep. Because when you're selling, you have to make sure if the person passed away, you have to have the certificate of appointment of a state trustee with or without a will. And if you don't, which you should, sometimes people put the condition, it's conditional on them receiving it.
Right.
So you just have to make sure you have the right documents.
Yeah. So, Melissa, tell us, when should an agent be actually using the power of attorney? Because it's not always necessary, correct? to be
No.
using the document?
And there are different types. So the power of attorney for property, you can have it effective immediately. So whether you're incapacitated or not, so that's a continuing power of attorney. And you have to be careful because there's certain restrictions. So if you look at the commencement date in a power of attorney for property, it says it's either effective immediately or only on that person's incapacity. So if they are incapacitated, where's the assessment from a doctor saying that they are incapacitated?
Right.
So that you have to be very careful of to find out when is the commencement date.
So even, but how do I know that that power of attorney hasn't been revoked?
Exactly. So, and that's another thing. And I've had it happen before where I receive the agreement and I call the agent and I find out, I try to find out why is it being used. And they're like, I don't know. Like, well, how do you not know? You sold a home. So you have to do everything in your power to try to talk to that person to find out, do they have capacity? If they do, why are they electing this person to sign on their behalf? And if they don't have capacity, again, is there an assessment? But if it was revoked and they don't have capacity, then you don't really know.
Right. So I just always finish by saying, ideally, find out who the seller's lawyer is,
Yes.
get an email and say, this is the right person. Yes, the power of attorney is valid, and this is who you need to be dealing with.
Yeah.
So, they hate when I do that. But I just say,
Sure.
what, right now, everyone loves each other. Right now, everything's great. And then it only becomes an issue when it's an issue.
Yeah.
And so why do we want this in the future?
Yeah.
So, and the paperwork that we have to deal with today, especially when there's wills, estates, especially when there's power of attorneys, it just adds so much paperwork. And I understand their frustrations, but we need to gather that paperwork. Otherwise, we just run into a lot of problems. So tell me about some other issues that come across your desk when on a daily basis, especially in this market. What about people who can't close, or you're having issues with questions from buyers, lawyers?
Not so much now, but definitely in 2024, we saw a lot of that where people couldn't close, whether it was on pre-construction or they bought in the height and now they just couldn't get a mortgage because the prices have dropped. So that was very hard. And I mean, we don't do the litigation end, so we would have to refer them out if they couldn't close, but we would try our best to come up with other ideas to see if they could get a mortgage and refer out. But that was definitely hard.
So when those problems come close to closing, so a week or two, there might be an anticipatory breach. They notify you.
Yeah.
Do you want the agents to get involved? I usually defer it.
No.
I say, guys, once the deal, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I always tell our agents, once the deal's firm and we've gotten all the documents signed and sent it to the lawyers, it's now a contractual issue.
Yeah.
And we're not there to litigate the contract. We've created it. It's done. It's signed. It's executed. It's now in your hands.
Yeah.
So I always defer them to the lawyers. This is a legal issue.
That's the right thing.
They really, really need to speak to their lawyers about where they go from here.
Yep. I agree. At that point, there is nothing really that the agents can do. And even if it were my client where I'm on the selling end, I wouldn't want the agent involved. I would want to do an extension or whatever we need to do on the lawyer end.
Right. Yeah. And that helps. And in my opinion, that just helps the agent so much more.
Yeah.
But they want to get involved because now there's sellers calling them saying, hey, we heard that they don't want to close. What are you doing about it? And we have to tell them, well, it's really now in the lawyer's hands.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about your law practice in terms of, I understand that you provide some educational guidance in terms of, is it to getting into the law business or is it to getting the real estate business? Tell us a little bit about that.
I always try to help any way I can. So like last year in 2024, I put on a CPD for lawyers, a continuing education program at the Arlington Estate. So it was centered around different areas of law and just informing other lawyers about different topics. I also do like educational social media posts. If any lawyer or even agent ever has any questions about their business and they just want to talk, I do that too. But I like helping people and I like helping them with their business. So in the end of September, I am launching an online book. I know how hard it is to start a business. And when I started my law firm, there was no guide. I just had to figure out everything on my own. And even with starting the brokerage, it was the same thing. So I kind of want to put everything together in one spot where a professional, whether they're a lawyer, a real estate agent, a mortgage agent, they can go to that guide and say, okay, this is what I need to start my business from A to Z. This is how I will market. This is how I will budget. These are the different companies that I maybe need to contact. If you're a professional, you have to contact the Law Society. You have to set up the right kind of trust account. So I'm launching that to help different professionals in their field to just have a one-stop shop so they have everything that they need.
Okay, that sounds fascinating. I mean, from my perspective, from the real estate side, I'm on the industry advisory council for RICO, and one of my biggest beefs is I think the real estate content, the continuing ed and the actual courses to get your license is fantastic.
Yeah.
The quality, the quality of the information, the difficulty of it is right up there. However, my biggest beef is the implementation of it. And unfortunately, I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's working. So I'm fascinated to hear how you're going to perhaps help people along, because our educational system, to me, like I said, to repeat myself, is just not working. I don't think people coming into this business are actually learning what they need to learn. I'm just not sure that the people who say they're doing what they're doing are doing it. And we don't really have a system to make it clear. So, for example, to become a lawyer, I can't just go online and become a lawyer. I don't think it's quite that simple. The problem with our industry is we can literally go online and do the entire program online. Yeah. Now, they do, when you have to write the exam, there is some element of trying to identify you. I'm not sure I'm convinced of it. But it's just not as, we did a survey, Real Estate Council of Ontario did a survey about, where we rank in terms of professionals. And lawyers were just a little bit ahead of us. But, the up there, of course, was doctors, nurses, pilots, and a few other, well-known professionals. And I said, well, the common denominator of all those people is you can't do any of those things online.
Yeah.
Ours are done online. And, there's 75,000 realtors running around the GTA and 100,000 or plus in Ontario. And we don't have any standards in terms of how much work they do, and how effective they are. Yeah. They're supposed to be taking these continuing ed courses. But again, the implementation of it, the course content is fantastic. I'm just going through them now. It's fantastic. But the implementation, I think, is extremely weak, and it concerns me. So it's nice to hear that you're doing those things that you're doing for perhaps new lawyers. I think the challenge for realtors, I'd love to learn about what you're doing and see how it helps realtors. Because, it's a constant battle for people like me when they come into this industry brand new. They really don't know anything about they know some of the legalities of it, some of the ethical issues, but they really know absolutely nothing about what they've gotten themselves into.
Even after coming out of the course, a lot of them still don't even know what documents they need to have. They just don't know. And it's like, but you just completed your course. So how can we kind of bridge that gap and help them to actually know when they get started and they're thrown out there what they're actually supposed to be doing?
But what makes that even more challenging is once you get the documents and you use them and you do it, you get pretty familiar with them. The problem is that, as we know, you can look at the stats, 85, 90% of the people don't do any business or very little business. Yeah. It's incredibly concentrated in my field. It's 10 to 15% of the people do all the business. So when someone who's part-time, which is a huge beef for me, massive beef for me, because we're handling people's most, prized asset, and you're a part-timer. I don't know of any part-time pilots. I don't know of any part-time lawyers. I don't know of any part-time doctors or nurses. Maybe there are, but I don't know how effective they can be. But we seem to allow it. And when someone does one transaction or no transactions in 2-3 years, how can they know about the documents? Yeah. And then the burden comes on to people like me when they come to me and say, oh, which document do I use? We've had several meetings on it. We've had several courses about it. Several emails go out, but hoping they read them, but they're too busy because they're part-time. Yeah. We don't don't hire part-time people for that reason, because it's just so difficult to be competitive in this business, and having a part-timer just doesn't work. So sorry, I'm going on.
No, but that's a problem. They're not treating it like a business,
Yes.
and it is a business.
Yes.
You have to give it 100%.
And I don't know of any other industry. I don't know of lawyers that do this. I don't know of any other industry that actually does this. And the failure rate, like if 80%, and when I say failure rate, I always tell people who don't succeed in real estate, I have family members, I have good friends who didn't succeed. And I say, you're actually normal. Yeah. You're normal. Because only 15% of the people, maybe 20, that's really pushing it, actually succeed. So if you don't succeed, you're normal. I don't know of any other profession where we accept an 80% failure rate. I hope we don't have that in doctors. I hope we don't have that in lawyers. I hope we don't have that in pilots.
Yeah.
But we seem to accept it. And that's probably a big issue for me. So again, not to repeat myself again, but I'm fascinated to hear how you're going to hopefully make a difference in that side. Because it's just a never-ending battle for us.
Yeah. Again, I think the number one thing is that you really have to treat it like a business, and you have to work on it every single day, and not just the 9 to 5. I don't work 9 to 5. I probably work 24/7, but that's just me. But you have to treat it like a business.
Yeah, and that's part of and that's exactly it. This business is extremely competitive. Yeah. It's extremely tough. And I tell people, part-timers come in to see me all the time, and I go, look, and I always spend, I don't care. If they call me on the phone, they go, yep, I'm a part-timer, I'm this, I'm that. I say, come in and talk to me. I never say, don't come and talk to me.
Yeah.
I say, come in. I always give them an hour of my time, and I tell them exactly what they need to be aware of. A lot of times they think I'm crazy, but as my podcast says, it's about being real. Yeah. And as Thomas Sowell says, tell people, if you want to help yourself, tell them what they want to hear. If you want to help them, tell them the truth. And it's always difficult, and it's not always a popular thing when I'm doing it. And so people leave here, and again, I miss out on a lot of interviews because I just want to tell them how it is, because I want to manage that expectation. So anyway, it's fascinating. Like I said, I'd really like to hear a little bit more about what you're doing, because maybe we can implement some of that here. But yeah, it's interesting to see when they come out of the schools how little they know just about some of the basic stuff.
I agree. So Carlo, since you've been in the industry now for about 40 years, what kind of initiatives or advocacy are you involved in?
Well, in 1986, I had just spent my 7th year in organized real estate for the Mississauga Real Estate Board, and I became the youngest president of the real estate board. Oh, wow. And in those days, we were 1,500 people. So 96, I guess I was 30 years old, I think, I guess at the time. Then I went on, so I did 7 years at the real estate board. And then, so you really learn a lot about organized real estate, because then I attended all the AREA conferences, the Korea conferences. And then I spent 2 years at the Toronto Real Estate Board, and I was actually chair of finance. So that was an eye-opening experience. Yeah. And again, traveling around the country, meeting everybody. And one of our guests is going to be the CEO of TREB, who's coming up soon. After the Toronto Real Estate Board experience, I decided to continue, and I went 2 more years at the Ontario Real Estate Association. So for 9 years straight, I was part of organized real estate. And I think the biggest frustration for me, I enjoyed it. It was a great learning experience. The biggest frustration for me was my inability to make change. And change, what I mean is the core change in the industry. So the Real Estate Council of Ontario, which is a fabulous organization, and the people that work there, it's fabulous. They're all very professional. They're all very talented. I just think the method at which we maintain the industry, and the method at which we educate the industry, and our requirements to stay in the industry are very weak. I just don't know of any other industry that's like that. So I applied to go on the Industry Advisory Council at RICO. I got appointed. We've had 3 meetings now, and I'm fascinated to hear what people's stories are and what we can do to make things change. But it's a real challenge. And I would say that, I'll continue to always care. I'll continue to always try, but I can only live by example. And my office here, we only have, people think it's a big deal, but with the 2 offices, we only have 150 people. My colleagues, have 1,000 or 1,500 people. Yeah. So everything's relative, I guess. But we've managed to stay out of RICO hearings. I've never attended a RICO hearing in 40 years, and we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions. Have we had complaints? Yes. We tend to manage most of those complaints in-house or with the client. But if we have to deal with them on the RICO level, we deal with them. But we deal with them in a professional manner, and I make sure, and RICO also makes sure that, you know, the agent who's created whatever offense they've done, that they've learned from it. So again, to your question, we're trying.
Yeah.
It's not easy. There's just so many people involved, and and so many boards and associations. It's just really, really challenging to get some real change. But I think eventually it will happen, where our industry takes it to a different level and makes it a little more difficult or a little more accountable in terms of having a license. Like we said earlier, I mean, I have a license to list someone's now $1 million house as a starter home.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, we're listing people's $2 million, $3 million homes. It's their life savings. And I just don't think that everyone is qualified to do that. So it's a bit of a challenge, but, you know, we're never going to give up.
You're inspiring me to want to help change.
Well, I hope you can do it, because I'll be right there with you.
Yeah. No, everything you said is true.
So Melissa, if you know, we have a roundtable meeting every couple of weeks here, you know, usually 30, 40 people show up. We have guest speakers. So if I were to have you come in and speak to our staff or our agents, what would be one or two of the top topics that you'd like to discuss?
Another thing I always like to bring up is Schedule A clauses. Sometimes people think, or agents think, a breach of one of those clauses will they don't have to close. Yes, they do have to close.
Oh, yes.
So just one little thing going wrong doesn't mean that you cannot not close on the deal. And that happens actually quite often. And we have to just bring them back to reality that it might be a small claims issue. Obviously, we'll always try our best to advocate for our client, or expecting holdbacks when we don't need to do holdbacks. If that's something you wanted, that's the way you should have structured the clause. I personally don't like to do holdbacks unless I have to.
Of course.
Because then it just can get very gray areas, and then you're arguing back and forth. So crafting clauses is a craft.
And it never hurts to ask your broker.
Yep.
Because I write for them all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes I just write them for them. They drive me nuts. It's just easier. Instead of saying, go find them, I just write it for them.
Yeah. And I even have agents call, like a lot of agents have my cell phone number, and they'll call me, and I'm always happy to help. Even if I'm not the lawyer on the file, I will help them craft these clauses. But yes, 100%, it's a skill.
Yeah. So a lot of times I will write the clauses for them, but ultimately my point to them is just plain English.
Yeah.
Write something in plain English that people understand what you're trying to say. And then I'll say, send it to me. I'll have a look at it. But you don't need to have legal jargon. Just say, you know, this is what we expect. This is what we understand. And if I understand it, if I understand what the obligation would be to a buyer or a seller, and there's ever a problem, a lawyer will understand it and a judge will understand it.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of my ultimate go-to is just write what you're looking for in plain English.
Yeah.
So final thought, Melissa, thank you again very much for this. But if you wanted to leave 3 tips for my agents or for any agents, what would they be?
Okay, definitely number 1 is education, staying on top of your profession and know what's going on. Number 2, Schedule A and crafting clauses. And number 3, knowing when to ask for help or advice. Yeah,
that's great. That about settles all those things because ultimately they have to know where to go. I don't always have the answer.
Yeah.
I have it a lot of times, but I always know where to go to get the answer.
Exactly.
So I can't argue with any one of those points. So again, thank you, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.
And this was really good. Lots of fun. And thank you to all of you who've watched this podcast, and stay tuned for more.